We are in the worst stage of the pandemic so far, and the outgoing president is laser focused on two things: overturning the election results and counter-programming Joe Biden's inauguration. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Until Trump emerged for his unhinged rally in Georgia this weekend, the nation was watching a bizarre split screen where on one side you had the incoming president, who doesn't actually have any power yet, addressing the nation on a regular basis, consulting his team of medical advisors, laying out his plans and calling for action amid the worst national crisis in 100 years. And on the other side, you had the current president in a sort of self-imposed hibernation from which he emerged only rarely to give bizarre minute-long press conferences about the stock market or lumber around his golf course by himself like a hungover Bigfoot on vacation. No pictures. No pictures, please. And not only has he been avoiding public appearances, he's apparently avoiding private ones too, amid the worst stage of the pandemic, with the country setting new records for cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. Trump has been ignoring his own COVID task force.
The task force will remain together, though. Of course, a question is how often they're going to continue to meet with the vice president. They've been trying to resume their weekly schedule they had maintained before the election, but our reporting still shows President Trump himself has still not attended a coronavirus task force meeting in months.
I mean, obviously, he should be there, but it is a little like Hawkeye not showing up to an Avengers meeting. They can probably go ahead and start without him. You know what, I'm just going to put him down for arrows, and if I'm wrong, we can change it when he shows up. Obviously, it would be ideal to have a president who, cares that thousands of Americans are dying every day, but I have to imagine it might also be a bit of a relief to the members of the task force when Trump doesn't show up to distract everybody with dumb questions. As you'll see here, Mr. President, the virus is now spiking in almost every region of the country. Just spitballing here. Is it possible it spiked in a way that could have led to voter fraud? And say it again, this is just off the top of my head. Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia. I'm sorry, Mr. President, how would that even happen? It's a spitball, guys. You can't ask follow-ups to the spitballs. It's like the first rule of spitballs, because then you're de-incentivizing the spitballs. Of course, if he had showed up to any of those meetings, he would have heard dire warnings like this from one of his own medical advisors.
This is not just the worst public health event. This is the worst event that this country will face, not just from a public health side.
Yeah, 2020 is one of the years on record, and it's ending in the possible way, which I guess is exactly what you'd expect. You don't watch Paul Blart hoping it's going to turn into Citizen Kane in the third act. They didn't have Manx writing the script. We could have easily been prepared for this. Instead, we have to hope our current president is sitting at home in his sweatpants channel surfing and accidentally clicking past Meet the President, because Trump doesn't listen to his advisors. Instead, Trump prefers to get his information about the pandemic from medical experts like this guy.
I have the best analogy, which I hope makes sense.
Okay, let me stop you right there. If you have the best analogy, you shouldn't have to hope it makes sense. Then again, you shouldn't be on TV if you can't tie your shoes without doing the whole rabbit story out loud. But go on, let's hear this analogy.
Pete Rose was going through a divorce in the 70s, and it was brutal. It was in the front pages of every headline. And they said, Pete, you're hitting 360 while you're going through this public divorce. It's brutal. And he said, I'd rather go through a divorce hitting 360 than 60. That's just it. We know how bad the virus is. Why are you making it worse on people that just want to be able to survive while we wait for a vaccine, which is right in front of us?
Yeah, okay, a lot of reasons why it's not the best analogy. One, it seems weird to use Pete Rose in an analogy and reference his divorce instead of his far more famous gambling scandal. That would be like saying Boris Johnson is like the Titanic because they're both British and that's it. Two, going through a divorce is not as bad as COVID because it's not fatal and you can't infect other people with divorce. Though, I see you trying, Diane. I'm glad you're living your best life after your split with Kevin, but it's giving ideas to everyone else in the book club. Tone it down on social media, Diane. It's never good when a guy like Brian Kilmeade starts an analogy with, I have the best analogy. It's like hearing your dad say, I can dunk this basketball. I mean, you gotta call 911 before he even makes it to the hoop. Although, I do think Pete Rose is definitely the right role model for Trump's post-presidency. After he pays all his legal fees and his loans come due and no one wants to stay in his chintzy hotels anymore, he'll probably have to set up a booth down the street from the White House where he'll sign your MAGA hat for $50 a pop. And you want me to make it out to someone? Okay, that'll be another $50. So the current president is fully checked out while thousands of Americans die every day on his watch and the numbers only get worse. Instead of doing anything at all about what his own medical advisors are calling the worst event this country will face, Trump is still obsessively trying to get the results of the election overturned.
President Trump continues to be singularly obsessed with overturning the presidential election results. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reports that just today, President Trump called Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and pressed Kemp to call a special session of the Georgia legislature to somehow overturn the November election results.
I probably worked harder in the last 3 weeks than I've ever worked in my life doing this.
If the hardest you work is the 3 weeks after you were fired, that might be why you were fired. That would be like Pete Rose saying, I've probably been a better husband in the 3 weeks after my divorce than I ever have been in my life. Oh man, I just kill-meated it, didn't I? Shouldn't have done that. But yeah, no, you're working harder now. You can't be bothered to show up to meetings or negotiate with Congress or tell people to wear masks, but you'll call into every state legislative hearing in the country on speakerphone like a celebrity getting paid to leave voicemails for fans. Happy birthday. I'll see you on the holodeck. Energize. Happy now, Timmy? Dad got frakes. So maybe now we can chill about the fact that I forgot it was yesterday. I'm sure an exhausted nurse working a double shift in a COVID ward was psyched to hear the president bragging that he's working double shifts, tweeting at Fox News and sending his maskless gargoyle lawyer to spray COVID spittle on local elected officials while riding shotgun with accomplices too loony for the Joker. Boss, when it comes to witnesses, this lady is a 10. At least that's what she blew on the breathalyzer. Trump actually called up the governor of Georgia and asked him to overturn the election results, also known as coup calling. Because if you're not calling this an attempted coup, then what are you calling it? Because that's what it is. Just because it's a dumb, lazy coup that won't work doesn't mean it isn't still an attempted coup. If Trump walked into a bank with a Nerf gun wearing a mask on his own face and said, give me all your money, we'd still call it an attempted robbery. We wouldn't be like, that's just Trump being Trump, give him a few bucks and send him on his way. Well, I mean, he would. And of course he would. And she would. And well, they would. Well, and they certainly would. You know what? It's still not right. And yet it's true that Trump is working hard on at least one thing, not on combating the pandemic, but on counter-programming Joe Biden's inauguration.
President Trump appears to be following through on rumors he plans to skip Joe Biden's inauguration. A new report claims the president is considering a dramatic White House departure that includes a final Air Force One flight to Florida, where he will host an opposing rally at the same time Joe Biden is sworn in.
I mean, just go away. This guy won't leave us the hell alone. Also, you just know Air Force One is going to come back looking like a Motley Crue tour bus. Last flight, everyone. Eat as many snacks as you can. And remember, no flushing. We're going to also leave it on empty. He's never going to stop demanding we keep paying attention to him. Honestly, one of the most soul-crushing things about Trump's rally on Saturday, aside from his lies about the election and claiming the pandemic was almost over, was just the realization that he's never, ever going to stop doing these. He's going to keep touring like Billy Joel if Piano Man was a song about how Hillary Clinton should be in jail. 20 years from now, a 94-year-old Trump will be clinging to a podium in Tallahassee, dancing to YMCA and rambling about old celebrities no one remembers. We love Lou Holtz, don't we, folks? Sweet Lou! Nobody talks about Lou Holtz anymore. Mean guy. Nice to meet though. Sweet Lou! And of course, it isn't just Trump who continues to deny the reality of his election loss and refuse to concede. The Washington Post conducted a survey and found just 27 Republican members of Congress who were willing to acknowledge that Joe Biden won the election. And during a debate in Georgia last night, GOP Senator Kelly Loeffler refused to say whether Trump had lost.
Yes or no, Senator Loeffler, did Donald Trump lose the recent presidential election?
You know, President Trump has every right to use every legal recourse available. It's about who won the election when this process is still playing out, and President Trump has every right to every legal recourse. The president has the right to pursue every legal recourse to make sure that this was a free and fair election in Georgia. The president has every right to every legal recourse. That's what's taking place.
Sure, anyone has the right to file a dumb lawsuit, but these guys keep losing. On Friday alone, they lost 6 court cases in 6 different states in one day. They are the Jets of legal challenges. At some point, you think the Jets would just pack it in and turn the stadium into a giant Jamba Juice or something. And then this morning, Georgia officials said they would recertify the results in that state after a second recount showed he won there, which comes just a few days after a recount Trump paid for in Wisconsin actually turned up more votes for Biden. I mean, how many times does Biden have to win these states to prove to people that it's real? And how come Rudy can just keep walking into courtrooms and demanding recounts like some Roman emperor being fed grapes by a eunuch? Julianus, ill news from the Senate. The vote has been lost. Count them again. Make them count. Second, she just malfunctioned and kept repeating the same words over and over like a tipped-over protocol droid.
My opponent, radical liberal Raphael Warnock, radical liberal Raphael Warnock, radical liberal Radical liberal, 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 radical liberal.
Just in case you didn't get it the first 12 times she said it, it's like when a 4-year-old learns one new piece of trivia at the zoo and can't stop repeating it. Did you know giraffes don't have vocal cords? Did you know that? Did you? That's great, Timmy. Don't just go play with your iPad for 5 hours or something. We're in the deadliest stage of the worst national crisis in 100 years, and the president is obsessively focused on counter-programming Joe Biden's inauguration and trying to overthrow the democratically elected government, and virtually the entire Republican Party is in lockstep behind him. Watching this happen to America is like watching Pete Rose
going through a divorce in the 70s.
This has been a closer look. God's Love We Deliver cooks and brings over 2 million meals a year to men, women, and children living with HIV, AIDS, cancer, and other serious illnesses, and they need your help. If you're watching this online, you can hit the donate button, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask. We love you.